Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of The Heart Work with Marty Martin. And The Heart Work, celebrating our racial diversity while building and fostering racial harmony, one conversation at a time. And we know that the heart work is hard work, but it's not impossible. And I'm honored today to have one of my favorite guests, probably one of my most favorite people in the world, to me anyway. And that's my lady, my love, my wife, Heather Martin. She's here today. We're going to have a conversation about the importance of having conversations about Black issues with people that may not be Black, that may be white, Hispanic, Asian, whatever. We want to talk about the importance of having these conversations because we've heard time and time again some Black people or African Americans saying, you know what, I'm tired of talking, I'm tired of answering the questions. But you know what? Now that folk are asking, we need to answer. Now that folk are willing to open up and have these conversations, we need to have these conversations. So we kind of wanted to have this kind of dialogue about the importance of having these conversations with our non-Black brothers and sisters and friends and family and neighbors, uh, so that we can build the cohesiveness and the harmony that we desire for all people. So, honey, we want to kind of talk about how this came about. I think one of your conversations that came about with one of Melody's uh, gymnastics mates' parents who approached you.
Yes.
So maybe we could start there about that.
Yes. So the George Floyd um, tragedy had occurred, and there were a lot of different posts that were happening on Facebook at the time. And of course, I have a large variety of friends on Facebook from elementary all the way up through college, and then some colleagues of mine that I've encountered in the workplace, and now some of the people I've encountered through my daughter's gymnastics. And so having that
Our
kind of
daughter.
our daughter, and so having that type of variety of contacts and friendships has allowed me to hear different perspectives. And so one of my daughter's gymnastics moms contacted me and said, "Hey, I just want to check in on you, make sure you and your family are okay."
And this is non-Black
Yes,
parent. Okay.
yes. And, you know, I thought it was an interesting thing that she reached out to check on me. In particular, she said that our family was important. And mind you, in the sport of gymnastics, there's not a large number of African American children or little Black girls. I think we
It is.
see
We're
larger
starting to see it
numbers
increase,
thanks to
but
Gabby Douglas, Simone Biles, and even predecessors like Dominique Dawes.
mhm,
But generally speaking, in
there's
a
very few of us.
very
Yeah.
few. And so I just thought it was encouraging that she wanted to reach out and see how we were doing as a family in light of what was happening. And then the conversation, I think, was an eye opener on her part. She thought that I had a very pleasant disposition. When I talk to the parents, I say hello, I greet them like I would like to be greeted, even though in many cases people don't greet me back. But I try to at least extend pleasantries and common courtesies when I see people. And so I just kind of been that mom. I also stay with my child during gymnastics practices. So I'm the constant face of gymnastics parents because I stay for the entire time. And so people have gotten to know me as that parent that seems to be the positive parent that says positive things, that stays in the gymnastics arena. And so she wanted to know my experience as a Black woman in America. Now, that's a lot to kind of offer in a short amount of time because I don't think when people ask that question, they're necessarily ready for what you're going to say.
Mhm.
And so explaining to her some of the challenges that we have faced as African Americans, Black people, just living in our area, traveling day to day, back and forth, going to do transactions, business transactions at the stores. And she was quite taken aback that we had these experiences. She was like, "Oh, but you're like the nicest Black person I know, and I'm just unaware and I don't know, and I'm just ignorant." She was very, very apologetic for my experiences, and just wanted me to help educate her about what we go through on
Right.
a day to day basis.
And I think that was the biggest piece. as much as some African Americans have expressed their frustration or being tired of answering, people want to know. And like our daughter's friend's mother, they really want to know if it's coming from a place of genuine concern and genuine um, empathy. We need to share our experiences. And just like this mom was kind of surprised about some of the experiences that Heather may have had and that I may have had, because they haven't had to walk in our shoes.
Right.
And yeah, we're good citizens. Yes, we're pleasant people. But sometimes people don't see that part of us first. They see this part of us first. And then once they get past this, then they can see the kindness and so forth. But that's not everybody. And so just the fact that someone non-black was interested in our plight, then I think we owe it to ourselves as well as to them as fellow human beings to share our story so that they can get the other side of the story and get another perspective, just as much as we need to get the perspective of others that are not from our race and our culture. Right now, it's just a heightened awareness of the plight of African Americans and blacks in our country at this particular time. And so we think it's really important to educate.
Yes. And not to be frustrated by the ignorance. And the ignorance doesn't come from a place of, I never wanted to know. It's just that if your circle and your community has always been monochromatic, so to speak, and you've never had any outside influences, then obviously you're not going to have any of that information other than what you read or what the media has fed you or what you've seen. And so to get a firsthand account from someone who lives and breathes and you see and you interact with and can touch is more meaningful than seeing images on media, television, social media especially, that you have no ability to ask questions of or get clarifications as to why that might happen, or to even express your disbelief or express your discontent and have someone respond to you and say, well, let me explain to you why we feel this way. I hear what you're saying, but let me explain to you why I feel from my perspective of what's happening. And I think that's a valuable conversation. And I don't want to leave that discussion for other authors to talk about my experience.
Right.
And it could be a black author too, because every black person's experience is different.
Right.
And so, but I don't want you to get your information from the book over there. If I can sit down with you and have that honest conversation, and of course, I'm a person who's going to speak unfiltered. And so if you ask me about my experience, you're going to get my experience raw. I'm serving it raw. You figure out how you're going to cook it. And if it's upsetting, uncomfortable, that's the reality of my life. And it's not my job to make you feel better about my experiences either. And so when I'm having those conversations, of course, I'm going to tell it like it happens. I'm going to tell it how I experience it. And I'm going to be very honest about my perceptions when I walk into places and how people respond to me. And that can be shocking and off-putting, but I definitely want the opportunity to be heard. I think that's such an important thing, not to be frustrated by someone who's trying to hear you but has never heard it like that before.
And you brought up so many things in that brief discourse there. One, when you talked about the media, perceptions from the media, because some people's perceptions of what African Americans or Black Americans are supposed to behave as comes from the media. And many times those characteristics and caricatures on television or sitcoms or what have you are stereotypical or negative or buffoonery that doesn't really represent all African Americans. And but when you were saying that, what came to my mind was I have a friend, a colleague from Kenya, Africa. And I remember when he came to visit here in the United States, and he pulled me to the side while I was at the conference in Reno, and he said, "So Milton, where are all the game bangers? And I don't hear a whole bunch of folk calling women B's and H's, and where is all that? Because that's all we see on the movie screens in Kenya." And so just that piece there. Now, if you want to get frustrated, I get frustrated by that. And this is where we have an opportunity, as you said, to let our stories be heard. And so if they're asking you questions, answer them
Yeah.
so they can hear it directly from you, and get your perspective. And our perspective is just two perspectives, two individual perspectives. And we don't represent all African Americans. We don't speak for all African Americans or blacks, but we do have a black experience as American citizens. And so I think it's important for us to share that story and to support broadcasting and television and media that puts us in a positive light and shows all the gamuts of who we are as a people. We are not all gangbangers. We are not calling our women B's and H's. We respect our women. I have nothing but love for this woman, but we respect our women. We take care of our children. We are good citizens. And those are some of the images we need to see more of in our media. But I digress because we're talking about having conversations with others. But this is a conversation that we need to have with Hollywood and with the media and with the newscast. So, yeah, this is still a conversation we need to have, even with the media. And so it's really important there. And then, so you talked about the media, you talked about making sure you get to share your story and the importance of that. And then we're not responsible for the other person's feelings as we share our stories. I remember you would share with me that particular mom was so apologetic and she
Yes.
wanted to fix everything, but that's not her responsibility
No.
either. But it's not our responsibility for her to feel comfortable in our expression of our experience.
Right.
Sometimes people, a matter of fact, I was just listening to an interview um, from that Breakfast Club show,
Yeah.
and she was talking. One of the panelists, I don't watch it often, so I don't know if she's a regular or what, but she was talking about her having a conversation about race with a group of influential people in society, and shucks, one of the people she said that was at the table was Jenner, the one who went through the but yes, and as she was expressing, as this African American woman was expressing her concerns and what she felt needed to be done, Jenner said, "Oh, I just want to stop the conversation because it's getting too hostile." Just because someone's expressing how they feel about something, that doesn't mean it's hostile just because you're uncomfortable. Oh, this is a hostile environment. Oh, we can't have this conversation. No, you need to have this conversation. Your discomfort is not hostility. We're not being hostile towards you if we get passionate about what we've been through for decades, and for our ancestors when we look at that for centuries. And so we are, I will say, it's not stereotypical, but generally speaking, African Americans, we're very gregarious and very expressive, and we may get a little loud. And so
depending on the topic.
Depending on the topic.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we get a little passionate, but our passion, it shouldn't be a threat, because when I see other people get passionate and loud about topics that don't look like us, whites, even Hispanics and other Asians, somehow that's not hostile. But when a black person gets excited, there's hostility. We don't control their feelings of being uncomfortable or feeling threatened in that moment as we're expressing ourselves. If we have not threatened them, if we have not plotted against them, we're just expressing how we feel and sharing our experience. So we can't let their discomfort stop us from having those conversations, nor can we let our own discomfort in having those conversations, because sometimes it's hard for us to have those conversations with people. Sometimes because we don't want to offend, or we don't want to rock the boat or ruffle feathers, but we need to press through our discomforts too and have those hard conversations until we get comfortable, until these things change. Mm-hmm. Anything else you want to add?
About having conversations.
The importance, we got to have these conversations.
Yeah, it's important to have the conversation and to be honest and authentic. You just want to be able to be yourself and really talk from your heart. I think that's the most important thing. Talk from your heart and speak in a way that's empathic of the other person who doesn't have the information, hasn't lived it, and is trying to get an understanding. Because if you're coming with all of those in place, with an open mind and open heart and a willingness to hear, then I feel like I'm obligated to speak and teach. And I can't
And
be
I think it was to,
frustrated by
like
that.
Stephen Covey said, to be considerate, be courageous enough to share how you feel, but considerate of the other person's feelings.
Right.
Yes, as I said, I'm not in control of how they feel and how they react, but I am considerate. So we got to speak the truth. As the Bible says, we speak the truth in love. It's not to get back at you and to blame you for all the woes of Black America. It's to share our experience because it's important for them to understand that experience.
And it's okay to be corrective in the moment because sometimes, in the haste to try to empathize, there may be things that are said that don't quite work. And it's okay to be corrective and say,
Mhm.
no, that's not quite it. Or no, that's not really what I meant by that. Or you don't really need to apologize for every white person
Right.
that has ever lived on the face of the earth, or for anything that you know that your ancestors or your family members have done because you know that they were blatant racists. That is not your job, and you don't have to take on the weights of the world in this moment with this conversation with me.
The goal of this
You're
conversation is
right.
really for us to move forward and to build harmony and to build understanding. So it's
Yes.
not for us to blame
Yeah.
or to hold you accountable for the woes of the past. It's to really build understanding and
Yes.
harmony.
Right.
And yeah, and to correct in the moment. I was listening to a woman who wrote the book about white fragility, and she talked about the importance of being corrected in the moment
In the moment.
because sometimes we say things and do things that are inappropriate. Both black and white and red and yellow, we all say things and do things that are not appropriate at times, and being corrected in the moment and being comfortable with that and owning that in the moment. I remember one time hearing a teacher refer to some students. Uh, she said, "You're not little monkeys." And right, they're not, but don't even refer to them as such, because most of them were brown and black babies that she was referring to, and this was a white teacher. And I had to have a conversation with her that you don't refer to our students as monkeys. Now, in some cultures, it's cool, they call their babies monkeys and say, oh, look at the little monkey and things like that. But in black culture, we're not cool with that. And I had to explain to her that we don't talk to our children or call our children monkeys because it was a very negative, uh, I guess, statement that was said to people of color. They referred to us as monkeys, even said that we had tails at one time. And so we don't take kindly to that, but just correcting her in the moment. And actually, with a couple of teachers, and both of them expressed their appreciation for bringing that to their attention.
Right.
Now, she also shared with me there was a story, a picture book that she had read to her class. It was a primary group of students. She explained to me that she had read this book, and it was about, I can't remember the name of the character, main character's name, so I'm just going to say George since I'm thinking Curious George. But it wasn't Curious George, it was another monkey book. But it was a book about the little monkey was going to school and the things that he did in class that were inappropriate and how he got better. Wonderful. So that was her explanation. I said, great, but just don't refer to our children as monkeys. It's not okay. So yeah, correcting in the moment, um, saying, stating what is appropriate or acceptable to us as a culture is okay. And I think that those that are willing to grow and to change, which some of you have seen, some of those that I've had an opportunity to speak with on our the heart work thus far, were people that were willing to take on the training that they received, the information that they received, and apply it to their lives. And we have positive relationships with those individuals. All right. Any final thoughts concerning the importance of having these conversations? I don't care how frustrated you are or how tired you are of answering the questions. You got to have these conversations. You have any final thoughts there?
Keep having conversations. Keep inviting those conversations. Don't necessarily wait for someone to ask to have that conversation with you. It's okay to ask others. Like, I just want to hear your perspective and how you feel about racial harmony, the racial issues, um, and just want to know if you're open to that experience. It's okay to reach out and ask others to participate with you. It's also okay to ask people that you're familiar with that are of your same race and ethnicity to have that conversation as well. Because I can tell you that as a Black woman that looks like this, meaning fairer skinned, different hair texture than my daughter, that I have a different experience than my much taller, darker brother, who has had way more police experiences than I've ever had. who can talk about many things that he's experienced as a Black man walking around with darker skin than myself. And so just being open to having those conversations with ourselves and being empathetic with each other about our global experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Just also understanding that people that are Afro Latinos who have challenges also within the culture of being darker skinned Latinos, also people who are Afro Asians who have similar issues where they're having challenges within their own cultures having darker skin. And so just being able to have those conversations just amongst ourselves is very important so that we all have a general understanding that this race that we're living in is not easy for everybody or anybody really, but we just have to have more empathy for everyone about how we live and experience this world because it is different for some than it is for others. And that's even amongst our own races. That has nothing to do with white people or anybody else. That's just as a people in general, we have a different experiences. And so being able to talk very openly about that and then also addressing the larger culture about why it's even more so difficult living in this world with them as well.
And I'd like to add in those conversations, really not just focusing on the past or even the current challenges of now, but also talking about ways that we can improve those relationships, how we can build harmony, racial harmony, as you said, even amongst ourselves and amongst other cultures and kinds. It's so important to also focus on the solution, not spend so much time bantering about what's wrong and what was wrong and what is wrong now, but okay, what can we do to make things better? And that's what this show is all about. That's what the heart work is all about. Not just talking about what's happening that's not right, but how can we make it better? How can we, as Les Brown says, better our best and get better at having these conversations, get better at getting along with one another, getting better at respecting and honoring one another as people, because we're all precious. We all matter, and so we want to build that kind of relationship with
And I
others.
just want to say one more thing. I think it's very important to get to a place where you're willing to protect each other. And I think that came out in my conversation with my gymnastics mom friend is that she is committed that when she saw something happening that she was going to watch, she was going to be that person who would take her phone out and she would record, she would be there on site, because she said that she couldn't stand to see another injustice without being a person who can use her own privilege and influence to either be a voice, a witness, or be able to tell the story, because many times when we have interactions that go sour, we end up dead. Whereas other people can get stopped for similar infractions, worse infractions, and be very much alive and well and get treated to Burger King. And so it's important that we have allies that are willing to stand there and just be witness so that we can get our stories out. Just be that person who can record and be brave enough to post. Be that person who goes down and lobbies City Hall. Be that person who is
Be that
willing to
person
be
with their
able to,
friends, and when their friends say something
that
that's
says, no, that's
inappropriate,
not
they'll say,
okay.
"Hey,
We're
that's
not
not
doing
all
that
right.
today.
We
No,
ain't
that's
talking
not what
like
we're going to
that.
do.
But ain't no N words around here." Well, you know what? I have friends that are black, and I don't appreciate you referring to them that way. So people that are willing to step up.
Step in and say that's not okay. And that means everything in terms of changing the conversation and changing the way people actually behave. So it's not just I got to change my thoughts. You can change your thoughts all day long, but if your behavior doesn't change consistent with the thought change, we don't really have very much happening.
Right.
So we have to have some action along with the thought process change. And as long as we're making movements in that same direction, then we're going to start to see not just a movement or moment, but you're going to see more of a movement and a shift in how we behave and think. And so as long as people are willing to take even small steps, like I'm going to be that witness, I'm going to be that person who says, no, that's not okay. I'm going to tell my family members when they're having those good old boy discussions that that's not what we're going to do. Or I'm going to be that person who we've always had the Confederate flag up. I'm going to now take it down. Having those type of movements is going to be very important for the overall shift.
Yeah, to bring that quantum change, that lasting change that we all desire. Well, you guys can see why I love this woman so much. She's she's it, y'all. She's it. I love her. And And I'm glad that I married her. I'm just
I
blessed that
love
way.
him too.
Yeah. So, anywho, thank you so much again for joining us here on the Heart Work with Marty Martin, and today with my special guest and my wife, my friend Heather Martin. And remember, the Heart Work is celebrating our racial diversity while building and fostering racial harmony, one conversation at a time. So we are glad that you joined us today, and we know that. If you enjoyed it, and take some time, please, to like and share this program with others. We're just regular people having serious conversations about the things that matter most to us all. And we know that hard work is hard work, but it's not impossible. So until the next conversation, live in peace and be blessed. Take care. Bye now.